pleased to introduce our speakers today. Our first speaker that I'm going to introduce is Karen Ehrens. I see. I don't think I can spotlight anyone because there is a presentation, but Karen, if you want to wave. So Karen Ehrens is a public health and nutrition consultant, registered dietitian, and policy advocate. She currently serves as a public health consultant on food and nutrition security and maternal and child health projects, and just completed 12 years as the facilitator for the Creating a Hunger-Free North Dakota Coalition. She serves on governing and advisory boards and the North Dakota Health Equity Committee. Karen was an intern for then U.S. Representative Byron Dorgan. In 2016, she was a candidate for the North Dakota House of Representatives. She has provided testimony to the City Commission, the state legislature, and the U.S. Senate on proposed legislation impacting health and nutrition. Karen is past chair of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Legislative and Public Policy Committee, and served the North Dakota affiliate as public policy chair. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for being here to speak with us today. The second speaker I want to introduce is Cody Schuler. Cody is executive director of the FM Coalition to End Homelessness, which is an advocacy, education, and collaboration nonprofit with a mission to prevent and end homelessness in the Fargo metro area. He sees his work personally and professionally as a piece of a larger puzzle of ending homelessness by organizing people to come together to change systems and advocate for social justice. Cody is a Fargo Housing and Redevelopment Authority Commissioner and serves on the boards of directors for the Fargo Downtown Neighborhood Association and the Human Family. Welcome, Cody, and thank you for speaking with us today. And then finally, I want to introduce Christina Feldmann, who is a cis-hetero mom, wife, sister, aunt, and friend to several members of the LGBTQ+ community. She advocates for the recognition of their humanity on a daily basis through conversation with acquaintances, coworkers, strangers, and to anyone willing to listen and grow. After losing her daughter, Haley, her writing has helped to raise awareness of organizations such as the Trans Lifeline and has encouraged support for the Jim Collins Foundation. She and her husband have spoken about the harmful effects that anti-trans legislation and policies have had on transgender people and their families. She has been interviewed by the Daily Beast, and several other media outlets have picked up her daughter's story. Thank you so much, Christina, for being here to speak with us today. So with that, I will turn it over to our speakers. Thanks.
Thanks, Ming. I'm going to get us kick us off here tonight. And just because I have done so many Zooms over the last 2 years, presenter and as a someone on the other side of it as well, I always like to remind folks, because I'm so surprised 2 years into doing Zoom for everything, that people don't always know that you can adjust your things. So Ming, I know he's going to spotlight folks. I know you can do things to click in the corner and make speaker view and all the kind of cool stuff. So just explore with that so you can find your best experience tonight. I'm really excited to be a part of this presentation and was honored that I was asked along with Karen and Christina to do this. And so as we go along this evening, we've already had our introduction, so we don't need to do that, but want to, again, just be thankful or say our thanks for being here tonight. I always like when I come to a workshop to kind of know where things are going. And so I thought tonight we'd kick off by sharing exactly where we want to take you all tonight. So you have some expectations, and also you can address questions or maybe delve a little deeper if we don't go deep enough for you. So the very first thing is tonight we really want to be able to give you all a little bit of hope, in the midst of what feels like bleak times at times. We want to be able to empower you to be a constructive, concerned constituent at the local and at the state levels in your community, and even nationally, if that would give a rise to your opportunities. And then also we want to hear stories of real work. And so we're going to try and accomplish all things of that this evening. And so to start, I just want to say, at times when I read the news, as I was right before this session started tonight, sometimes I get a little bit discouraged, and I can about imagine some of you out there also feel the same way. It's not very hard, just on a day like today, with a Supreme Court justice announcing his retirement and immediately reading comments that just floored me as to how open some people are in their racism and in their homophobia and in the things that they're just willing to say. It's like we've been given a safe space for everybody to say just things that are hurtful and offensive, and it is really gets me down. And so tonight I wanted to sort of kick us off tonight by just talking about how we don't need to be discouraged, how we can be hopeful. And so part of that is because I think we need to recognize who we are and what our role is. And this is one of my favorite quotes. We are the ones we've been waiting for. It's a line from a poem by June Jordan. And for those of you who don't know June Jordan, she was an amazing activist, not only in the LGBT plus community, but also in other areas of being anti-war, and was a feminist. And I love not only her work, but her work as an activist. And this quote, this line gets borrowed many times, but it doesn't always get attributed back to her. And so I wanted to, first of all, if you've ever heard this, I want to point at June Jordan because she's fantastic. And then also give a little bit of street cred. I have this quote from Barack Obama containing this quote on my desk, and I look at it every day. That change will not come if we wait for some other person and some other time, but we are the ones that we've been waiting for. And so that is my daily call to action when I sit down at my desk every day in my office. And so I wanted to share that with you all so that we can be inspired. Along with that, I thought it would be maybe appropriate to maybe share a little bit about what inspires me, and maybe it would inspire you. One of the reasons I do the work that I do in ending homelessness, addressing poverty, and myself as trying to do as much as I can to help my community in the LGBTQ plus community. What does that activity do for me, or where do I find the steam for that? Well, part of it goes all the way back to my freshman year in college at Dakota Wesleyan University in Mitchell, South Dakota, home of the Corn Palace, when I had at our homecoming week, there was a speech on book tour by Senator George McGovern, Dakota Wesleyan's most famous alumni. And Senator McGovern was on a book tour, but he spoke. And I remember, even though I was raised in this conservative Republican household, being so inspired by this leader of democracy, this Democrat who had run for president and had been this long senator and continued to do work in addressing hunger and poverty. And I then was very fortunate a few years later after graduate school, I ended up working back at Dakota Wesleyan. And in the meantime, George and his wife Eleanor had retired, and they were now living just up the street from me in Mitchell. And I got to work with George on a bunch of projects, including an annual hunger conference that we did. And what I discovered was George McGovern, this guy raised in Mitchell, South Dakota, was not only a World War II fighter pilot hero and U.S. Senator and presidential contender, but that he deeply cared about things on a very basic level, cared about people, cared about food, cared about what real people faced in their lives. And that he continued to do that, even though losing major elections. He continued into his retirement, into his 80s. He continued to work on these issues. There never was a day that I didn't see George walking his dog on campus that we didn't stop and have a conversation about the importance of the work that needed to be done. And I was inspired by that to want to continue on in my own life to be able to do that. Furthermore, all I had to do was look into my, 4th grade and 8th grade North Dakota studies classes to find a little bit of inspiration. So George McGovern, going back to George for a second, George revitalized the Democratic Party in the state of South Dakota because he gave up teaching and he got in his car and he drove from farm to farm and house to house across the state of South Dakota. And he actually kept a little shoebox with index cards, and he made notes on every meeting he had, essentially basic community organizing. And he did this and kept record. And not only did that rebuild the party, it also built his future political career when he went to go run for office himself. And I was always inspired by hearing George talk about meeting people where they were at and going from place to place to build that organization and that power to go do something into the future that was for the betterment of his community, his state, nation, and on to be the world. So then I look at our NPL past here. The Nonpartisan League here in the state of North Dakota did the same thing. Back in the teens when cars were new and a novelty, folks went around in car from farm to farm to organize farmers for their interest, which led to having control. And even though control of the legislature and the governor's mansion was a short-lived thing in the history of the state, today, we see the repercussions of that basic community organizing, that power building with our state mill and our elevator, and actually having been credited to help us weather recessions in the last couple of years. And so I am inspired by a senator from South Dakota. I'm inspired by those in the Nonpartisan League, which my great uncle was one of them as a legislator, who had this great hope. And I love and did all this good work that built generations of positive things for the citizens of our state. And I look at this old cartoon that was the cover of the Nonpartisan Leader magazine, where democracy is pointing at North Dakota and says, do not become discouraged. There is one bright spot where the people rule, and we have real democracy in America. Your day is coming. And I think that, although it doesn't feel like that today in North Dakota, that spirit is still alive. It's still in our DNA here in this state, and that we can have that kind of hope that indeed there is maybe some bright spots that we can find where the people really do rule and where democracy has its place and its hope. And so tonight, I really just come to you all being inspired myself and sharing that, but then also asking you all what inspires you as we go forward. And so in the chat box, feel free to maybe put down some things that inspire you. I'm a big West Wing fan, big Martin Sheen fan, and a quote from that show oftentimes used is, decisions are made by those who show up. So if we are the ones that we've been waiting for, and decisions are made by those who show up, you know, tonight I want us to be empowered. What are we going to do? And we might ask you that question again at the end of the evening. But who inspires you, or what inspires you? Feel free to write some things in the chat. And I'm just going to say this, I was teasing Karen that this was my opportunity to show 2 years ago before the pandemic started, I got to meet Martin Sheen at a thing in LA. And I was like, oh, I got to put this picture up because I never get to show it to anybody. So because Martin Sheen himself and as President Bartlett on the West Wing, we're also one of those people like Senator McGovern and our NPLers in the past. But anyway, yeah, please put in the chat box, what inspires you? Who inspires you?
I see those comments starting and keeping to flow in. So thank you for sharing what inspires you. And this is Karen, and I'm going to take over from here. Our presentation tonight is like an inspiration sandwich. We've got some inspiration at the beginning, some inspiration at the end, and I'm filling the middle with some ideas. And so I am inspired by you and honored by you for the invitation to be part of this summit. Thank you so much. Talking about being a concerned constituent. So we're kind of talking about a kind of a narrower definition of advocacy here. But we know that one person can make a difference and everyone should try. And it's those conversations that you have. You never know who you spoke to, who you shared a positive word with, that someday in the future that can make a difference to them in their lives. So just encouraging you to keep trying even in these times. And then just to also pick up on Cody's quote, in that if there is one success to advocacy, it is just to keep showing up. Although we may want to roll our eyes or wring our hands or throw up our hands and walk away, we need to keep trying. And these inspirational words from the other two folks on this panel, along with some concrete ideas, I hope will keep us all going to keep showing up. In the next slide, we have the reminder of our heritage in the NPL and what we have going for us here in North Dakota, and things we sometimes forget, but we do have some things going for us. We have every bill that's introduced gets a hearing. In Congress, for example, bills are introduced all the time and they don't get any further than that. We say they died in committee. That doesn't happen here in North Dakota because every bill gets a hearing and a vote. We have power given to us, people, in our Constitution of the ability to initiate ideas for laws through gathering signatures and getting things and ideas placed on the ballot. There are some challenges to wanting to limit that. So I'm sure you'll hear more about those challenges to our initiated measure proposals going forward. But we have that power. We have a small population here in the state, which makes it easier to connect with those who represent us. You can run into a legislator pumping his own gas at a gas station. That's happened to me a couple of times. And so another thing I'm going to encourage you to do is to share your story, because what if you have a chance meeting with someone at a gas station or while you're waiting in line, you recognize them as being elected to the city commission, state legislature. And what if you had something you could just pull out and say, instead of going, oh, shoot, I wish I would have talked about when I saw that person. So planting the seed now to keep your story pulled together and in mind. And as Cody so eloquently pointed out, the rich history and legacy of our nonpartisan league, the NPL. But 2020 is a great year to get started, because we had things that happened in 2020, which was the census. We're all counted up, and the legislators redrew our legislative districts so that we have the same number of districts, but placing more people as our population grew in each district. So one small step that you can take if you're not active yet in advocacy is to go to a website and find out which district you live in and who represents you. It's very likely there's going to be elections coming up this year, and your representative or senator may be up for re-election, or it could be a new district and everyone will be new. So go to this website, you enter your house number and your zip code, and you can find out which district you live in, and from there, find out who represents you. You can find that at the North Dakota Legislative website, which is legis.nd.gov. On the next slide, we have it. And there's a lot of information there, who our legislators are, schedules, proposed and passed legislation, and even videos now of each committee meeting and session of the House and the Senate. Sometimes things aren't straightforward in finding them there. So a group of advocates, as North Dakota Voices and Prairie Action, came up with a guide. You got it this morning in your email, and we have a little representation of it on the next slide on how you can navigate this legislative website. So when you're ready to start digging in a little bit deeper to legis.nd.gov, you can find some hints in your email or looking at this slide and on the website. The folks at North Dakota Voices and Prairie Action are a great resource for us, people who have progressive ideas and voices. Prairie Action brings organizations together. And And the great thing about it is these organizations are supporting each other in our efforts that we undertake, whether it's in childcare initiatives or ending homelessness, taking action on hunger. These groups have been brought together and we're working together, standing side by side and supporting one another in our actions. So if you need to feel like there's a little bit larger group than that one other person you might know down the street and maybe someone else's cousin who you think might think the same way as you do, you can find more of these folks here. You can sign up for the newsletter right at the website. And every weekday you can get a newsletter with relevant news. And Pray Action hosts Solidarity Saturdays about once a month, where we have the chance to come together right now virtually on a Zoom meeting like this, learn more about one another's efforts and ideas for taking action. So check that out if you're not already connected. In today's climate, it's really easy we're encouraged to look at people who don't have the same views as us and regard them as the other or as enemies. But I think to really get past this polarized climate that we're in, we can do things differently. I'll tell you just a little story about some advice that I gained from Senator Tim Mathern when I was running for office. He suggested that when I was out knocking on doors, I walk up to a house and try to find something that I thought I would have in common with the person living there, whether it's pretty flowers they planted, a pet that came to the door, or some, a sticker in the window, something that would give a clue. So what if we approached each person we're going to deal with and look to finding something in common rather than something to hate? It's easier said than done, I know, sometimes, because things are kind of tough here. But I encourage you just to give that a try, because every person that we meet is someone's son or daughter, or someone's grandson or granddaughter, uncle, aunt, or niece, another human being. And although we may not agree on much, if we can find one thing to agree on and work on together, we can make things happen. Another piece of advice that I found works for me is to find a buddy, is to find someone that will go to a meeting with you, someone who will stand behind you. On the next slide, I have a nice photo of someone who might go to a women's march with you and hold you accountable. If you say you're going to make a call or take an action alert, you can tell them about that and they'll follow up with you and make sure that you've completed that action. So a buddy might stand behind you when you're going to say something hard or do something that you find difficult for you. And also you might need a new friend. Another thing we can do is to support those who support our priorities. Support could be as little as just sending a kind word, shouting hello, or it could be something more substantial, like volunteering to knock doors for their campaign, for sending them some donation to their campaign, or supporting them in other ways. So support those who support our priorities, and we can try to get more elected to office. And when we do support those who support us, we also know who needs more education, from this epic newspaper story back from 2015. And finally, encouraging you again to share your story. Your story can help connect us as human beings. My friend Kim, for example, her story, or part of her story, is her advocacy started on the day her son told her that he's gay. And I admire and respect the people who are taking action and standing up. But your story, sharing that with someone down the block, that legislator that you met pumping gas, can help connect us to one another. There are times for our own health when we do need to step away for a while, but I encourage you to find and gather energy and come back, and to never, never, never get up. give up. As I described, the session is an inspiration sandwich, and we've had our first side of inspiration, a few concrete actions and ideas to encourage you to advocacy. And now I want to let you know that we have a very special story of a mom who's stepping forward to share why action from each of us is so important and crucial. Cody and I would like to introduce Christina Feldmann.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Cody. So tonight we are talking about what it means to be an advocate, how to get involved in that. And over the course of the last several days, I've been asking that question myself. What is that, being an advocate? I'm a mom. I do mom stuff. Except for like soccer games, I don't do that. But I advocate for my children. It's the only way that I know that I ever have. And it's occurred to me that advocacy it's a daily thing. It's something that you should be doing, you can be doing in all aspects of your life, regardless of where you're at and who's around you. And opportunities present themselves on a regular basis to humanize the people within your community. A lot of the politics these days make people like my daughter sound like they are a political agenda, or she's just statistics. She's a religious debate. Haley's just a person. She's just a human being. She just wanted to live her life and do it without the interference of people that really had nothing to do with her. I spend the majority of my time when I am advocating, which really is a constant, just trying to bring that out, the humanity of these people. We're not talking about a political agenda. We're talking about human beings. And we live in America, which is a great country. These are here within our country. They are citizens of our country. We have this great thing called the Constitution that should protect them. And it's unfortunate that that's become debatable, depending on your sexual orientation and your gender identity. All you need to be an advocate is the desire to change the world, the desire to find justice for the people that you love and the people that you know and the people that you don't know, and maybe you don't even particularly like them, but they're still worth fighting for. There is no power in silence, at least not for seeking justice. Like, it is my hope that everyone would realize how much power they have just by speaking up, even if it's just for one person. My dog is crying right now because she wants to go outside. There she goes. Sorry about that. I had a recent moment while I was at work where I was able to, I was given the opportunity to advocate for someone that I didn't know. And they come along randomly. It's quite possibly the best times when you just run into someone that you've never met. You'll probably never see them again. I work at a gas station, so that's a regular thing for me. Happens all the time. But this particular person was asking me about Haley. He was actually asking why I'd been gone from work for a couple of months. And I told him that it was because my daughter had passed. And he asked me how. And I told him that she had ended her life, that she was transgender, and my daughter was not a fighter. She just wanted to be left alone, just to be herself. And this gentleman goes on to talk about his niece and how she was transgender, and how he was talking about how uncomfortable certain situations were for her. And in something that he said, it occurred to me that he was talking about his nephew, not his niece. And so I said, your nephew, like, you're talking about your nephew. That's, that's your nephew. How far into their transition are they? And he says that they are, that they've already had surgery and they're living their lives as a man, as they should be. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. That's the courage that it takes to take all of those little steps that he took in order to get to the point where he was able to just have that life. A lot of people don't understand the fighting that you have to do, the constant fighting, sometimes over extremely mundane things that really nobody should be fighting about, but you still have to fight for it, especially as a transgender. It's your pronouns, it's the name you choose. So I told him, how courageous that is. Like, that takes so much courage and so much strength, and how incredible that is that his nephew is able to do that, that a lot of people never make it to that point, that Haley never had the strength to confront all of those confrontations that she was going to have to do. And he got teary-eyed, and he says, I don't know what else to say. And he said, thank you. Your daughter's story is, affected me. And I said, you should go give your nephew a hug and tell him that Christy says, congratulations, how fantastic that is. And that is advocacy. It's so simple to do it daily, regardless of where you're at or what you're doing. I don't know if my place of business knows they pay me for this, but it's very nice of them to do that. So recognize that your voice is powerful. Getting through to one person is better than getting through to no people. Like, one person, that's huge. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I think that oftentimes, as Karen and I talked about this session, I think sometimes immediately when we think advocacy, we immediately jump to what we need to do legislatively, or what we need to do and to affect ways in power and change in systems. And we do have to do that. But at the end of the day, and I'll just draw us back to my own inspiration of Senator George McGovern and the NPLers. Part of the reason what they did was important was in the face of something that felt hopeless, reviving a party when it was dead in a state, or standing up when outside interests were ruining or governing the interests of the daily lives and economic futures of farmers. To be able to look into that darkness and to be able to say, by telling a story, by having a conversation at the gas station, we start to make the small changes to move forward, to build the energy and the power that we need to be able to make the big changes. That's why it was so important. You know, Karen had that slide up there of the that form. I remember the day the form came out, just naming the legislators and how they voted, and to know who voted how. And I didn't see that as, oh, there's my list of enemies. I remember standing in my office when the paper came and I looked at it and I said, oh, these are the folks that we need to get to. Those are the folks we haven't gotten to yet. They're not my enemy. They're the people who don't get it yet. What are we going to do? We're going to do what Christy said. Tell those stories and to advocate one-on-one, to go from door to door, whether it be campaigning or just building those relationships. And so with that said tonight, knowing that this was a very high level, right, of what advocacy is, we could do workshops on organizing and power building and power mapping and all the stuff that needs to be done. But that's for a different night, I think. I think what we came here to do tonight was to say, for those of you who might say advocacy is scary, that terrifies me. I can't talk to my legislator. I can't do this. To show you that advocacy is lots of different things in many different ways, and to just get started at a basic level and to start wherever your comfort level is. And so with that, we wanted to open up the rest of our time this evening to be able to be a conversation. And I'm really happy to see that we've just got a really nice number here of around 20 people in the room to be able to have this conversation and to talk about if you wanted to clarify some things or go deeper on something or ask some other questions. This is a time of question and answer, and more so even of conversation in this group, to be able to talk about what does it mean to get involved in advocacy. And so with that, I'm going to open up the floor. I'll ask if Christy or Karen have any other closing comments, and we'll open it up to everybody.
I've got nothing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. That's all I have too. Just interested and curious to hear from others about, because leaving this great week of time together, we don't want it to end. We want to keep it going. And one thing you can do to keep it going is think of one thing, one action that you can do when you leave this session, maybe this weekend, maybe it's just giving someone a call or an email, finding a buddy. So let's talk about what's next.